there's only two things that people need in their workplace, and that's to add value and feel valued. Don't pick up solutions looking for problems. I woke up one day and my family was in Sydney and my best friends had moved to Sydney, and I was feeling somewhat isolated and a little bit alone. At the same time, I started tidying up a resume that I hadn't done for 11 years. And
so I'm just interested, how did you know when it was time to move on?
Well, this is an interesting one. Mentors are found, not given. I was a good technician, but not a great exec, is what I would say. Probably the best piece of feedback I ever got is he told me to shut up in a meeting without telling me to shut up.
How did a role that was so broadly across the business and touched so many different facets set you up really for the future to sort of move into technology?
It really comes down to...
On today's show, we have Dan Giesen-White. Dan started out working in hospitality before a role in customer service was a springboard into a career in technology. Dan has worked for a number of great companies, including Emmbr, Suncorp, Macmillan Shakespeare Group, Carlisle Homes, and most recently, Fleet Partners. Dan has built a reputation for taking on complex problems and getting things done. He's a straight talker whose key strength is in creating clarity of purpose. In today's show, Dan offers some excellent advice on how to accelerate a career in technology. So Dan, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you sort of taking the time to share your experience, your learnings, your wisdom from your career. And you've had a fantastic career in technology with some great companies. But I'm interested to understand, where did that start? And, I was looking, I guess, through your background. And I was curious, what was the life plan for a young Dan Giesen-White?
It was pretty simple. Just get a job, make sure I can make ends meet. I didn't really think through what my career was going to look like. I didn't really think about what I saw myself doing when I was 50, 55, 60. It was get a job and see where it takes me. When I really started early on in the piece, obviously, I thought I might want to be a teacher. Turned out not to be the career path that I was as excited about as I was when I started the course.
I was going to say, I saw that. So you did a Victoria University Bachelor of Education, but it said with technology.
Majored in English literature and technology, as I tell people quite frequently. I'm a qualified English teacher.
Yeah.
I did start there, and I thought early on in the piece, as we often do when we're a teenager, that this would be a good career path for me, and it's something that I was interested in, and I enjoyed working with children, and I went through the course, did the full degree, double majored, and at the end of it, decided that I do like working with children, but the environment of being a teacher didn't appeal to me.
Yeah, right. Okay. So had you spent some time in the classroom as part of that course?
Yeah, I spent time in the classroom. I did quite a lot of residentials while we were going through the course, and also did some short-term teaching placements soon afterwards.
So I think you graduated in 1997,
I
think, from what I saw. And there was a 3-year gap there.
There was.
On your LinkedIn, so maybe you could fill in the dots. What
Sure.
did you get up to?
So I stayed in the hospitality industry. I'd been working in hospitality through the time that I was at uni to be able to pay the bills, and I enjoyed it. There were aspects of hospitality I really enjoyed, particularly around the customer service and talking to people and those kind of things. So I stayed there for a while until it became evident to me I probably need to try something else. It's a little bit disruptive to a lifestyle being in hospitality, and so I thought I'll do customer service. Customer service is something I can do. I'll do that, and would have been around 1998, maybe 98, that I started applying for jobs. And at the time, it wasn't a great time to be looking for a job at the time. There were a lot of people, like the unemployment rates were high, so I was applying for 7 jobs a week in customer service, and I did that for about 7 or 8 weeks, and I got 2 interviews.
Yeah, wow.
3, sorry, I got 3, and one was for Emmbr as a customer service operator in their home insurance. One was for Amcor fibre packaging, and the other one was for Pivot Fertilisers. So in the end, it was in working in insurance, cardboard, or excrement. So I decided I'd go and work in insurance, and ended up working there. And I spent about 9 months in the contact centre, and was given an opportunity to start doing some of the reporting for home insurance, which was a relatively new product at the time.
Yeah.
And then I saw a job that appealed to me, which nowadays would be called a junior business analyst.
Yeah.
And I applied for that and didn't get it. Somebody else got it, so I kept doing the thing that I was doing, and then it came up again, and I applied again. I went and saw the general manager who was responsible for it, and told him that I was still interested, and asked him if he'd give me an opportunity to talk to him about it again, and I was lucky enough to get that, and I worked there for quite a while. I did that job probably for about 4 or 5 years.
So there's a couple of interesting things there, isn't there? So firstly, the fact that you went back a second time to apply for that, did you get some feedback in the first interview process that gave you something to maybe go away and work on?
Not specifically telling me to go away and work on something. The person that did get the job was more experienced than I was. She was a colleague of mine, and I could acknowledge why she was, or I understood why she got the job as ahead of me. But I was given feedback that I interviewed well, and should another role pop up, that I should put my hand up again.
Yep.
So I took that to heart, and I thought about what I might do to be able to improve where I was at that point in time, because I really wanted the job. It just sounded really interesting.
Yep. Yeah, fantastic. And I guess there was probably through that time a lot of growth with Emmbr as well as an organisation.
Yeah, the organisation was growing rapidly.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I started, I was there for 11 years. When I started, it was maybe about 1 million policies and 800 people, and when I left, it was about 3.5 million policies and about 3,000 people, and it was all organic growth. So it was an amazing story to be part of. It was a fantastic culture, which it was invested in. Like, they spent a lot of time investing in the people, their development, their training, and the culture that they put forward at Emmbr. So it was great.
And again, it's interesting there that probably more by I'm going to say luck than design. You ended up in that organisation, and I think, you know, for someone starting out, being attached to an organisation that is growing very quickly does create career opportunities.
It does,
because, you know, you are more likely to probably get promoted internally than from external, and maybe into roles that were probably bigger than your capability at that time as well. That's a fair assessment?
Yeah, that is fair. People will give you an opportunity. I think cultural fit is really important in that as well.
Yes.
You can work for a company that's growing extremely fast, and if you don't have a good cultural fit, then you'll probably get passed over for some of those opportunities that you believe you're best qualified to take the opportunity or to take. So, yeah, I think there are a couple of things for me that have been really key. Cultural fit is like enjoying the growth story that I've been part of, and I have been for Macmillan as well as Emmbr over my career, which has been the preponderance of my career in those two organisations. The cultural fit was really important. Yeah,
fantastic. And then where kind of LinkedIn picks up the story is around 2000 as head of operations with Emmbr.
Yeah, up in New South Wales.
There you go. So was that you relocated?
Relocated to New South Wales. I woke up one day and I had a great job. I was a senior person in business systems in Melbourne, and I woke up one day and my family was in Sydney and my best friends had moved to Sydney, and I was feeling somewhat isolated and a little bit alone personally, not professionally. They were fantastic. So I decided I was going to move up to Sydney where everybody was.
Yeah.
So I went into my boss's office and had a chat to him about it. He looked at me and I said, look, I'd really like to stay with the organisation, but I'm going to move to Sydney. So if there's an opportunity, I'd love to take it. And he looked at me and said, that's fine, but once I get the ball rolling, I can't stop it. So you just need to be really sure on what you're talking about there. And I said, yeah, I am. So I moved up to Sydney and I got the amazing opportunity to work in this made-up role for the General Manager of New South Wales, a guy named Ron Arnold, who's been a fantastic mentor to me over that period of time, particularly. Super intelligent, very, very commercially smart person, and he just needed someone who could do the job that he needed done at that point in time. So I had a chat to him about it. It was one of the best interviews I ever had. He rang me and he said, I hear you're looking for a role, and I've got this. Do you want to come and do it? And I said, can I think about it? And he said, no. And I said, all right, I'll take it. But I learned a lot, enormous amount over that period of time, and did stuff that I'd never otherwise have had the opportunity to do. I wrote a general and admin expenses budget for Emmbr New South Wales worth $74 million, which is the first budget I ever wrote in my life. Which was an amazing learning experience. I spent a lot of time talking to finance and the operations and anybody else that would talk to me, so I could understand what it was I was supposed to be doing. And that was an environment that I really enjoyed and thrived in, because all Ron wanted was to be able to give some of those jobs that needed to get done to someone who would take them away and figure them out.
Yeah, fantastic. And because I was reading about that role or looking at that role on your profile, and I was thinking it looked like it was broadly across the business, which you've kind of confirmed there. But I was interested in how did a role that was so broadly across the business and touched so many different facets set you up really for the future to sort of move into technology?
It really comes down to, I was curious enough about anything that people started realising that I'll have a crack at anything.
Yeah,
I really think that when people come and talk to you about and ask you to do something that might be outside of your immediate realm of knowledge or capabilities, those kind of things, a lot of time people say they've entrusted you with. I disagree. They've given you the opportunity to. Entrusted you with comes with a whole lot of caveats around, you can't fail, you have to do this, people are relying on you to. Yeah, people are relying on you to get somewhere, but they're giving you an opportunity to learn, they're giving you an opportunity to add value. And if you don't take those up and you don't think about it that way, you'll try and avoid any semblance of risk associated to it, which means you'll probably get stuck halfway through it. Because making the decision becomes really, really hard if you feel like that could be the wrong decision instead of just moving forward. So I think I learned a lot in that context. It was just go away and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? Go away and figure it out, come back to me. And they gave me guidance and support to be able to do it. I did a business case for them once and ended up in a meeting room with Ron and a guy named Robert Belville, who was the CEO of Emmbr at the time. And I'd done all this work about this one particular thing and went back in, and they had a look at it and they said, you know what, that's all good work. We really appreciated the information you've got. We don't think it's the right thing to do for our customers.
Yeah, right.
Which was a fantastic learning experience, right? It's going to inconvenience our customers. There is money in it, but not enough to offset the inconvenience we'd create for our customers. We're trying to make their lives easier.
So that's that can be a bitter pill to swallow.
It can.
And feedback it shapes us, but it can sting. So how did you respond, having put in the work and that was the response?
At the time, you've got the General Manager of New South Wales and the CEO in front of you. You go, okay, fair enough. When you go home, you sit there and you go, did I just waste a whole bunch of time? Right? Yeah. Like, I always say to people, like, there's only two things that you really people need in their workplace, and that's to add value and feel valued. Yeah, and at that point in time, going home and I didn't feel valued for the work that I was doing immediately. But when I went home and had to think about it, and I was living with my sister up in New South Wales at the time, and I had a chat to her about it, and she's much smarter than I am, and we had a fantastic conversation about it, and she said, I don't know why you're so upset by it.
Yeah.
Like, you just given them all the information they needed to make a good decision, right? So,
and it just that's a great learning, because sometimes you need to get the information to decide no.
Yeah.
Not always yes.
And you learn a lot about the culture of your organisation and what's important to them. And one of the things that it reinforced to me, because I already knew it, was there was an unerring focus on the customer, doing the right thing by the customer and doing the right thing by our staff.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to come back to that, because there's something on your resume. Hopefully I remember, but I will come back. One thing I'm really interested in around that role is that you were in that role for about 3 years. And for me, that's a really good, solid amount of time to be in a job. As in, you can achieve enough, but you don't go stale. It's probably the optimum amount of time. So I'm just interested, how did you know when it was time to move on?
Well, this is an interesting one. So I'd been there 3 years, as you say, and I'd really enjoyed it. And I loved working in that environment. My peers were fantastic. Ron was an amazing boss. The woman that got the job in business systems before I did was on maternity leave. The job came up as the manager of business systems, the 2IC to the GM, and I didn't apply.
Right.
And this was one of the harshest and most important pieces of feedback I ever got from a manager. So I hadn't applied. It had gone for a while. I guess everybody assumed that I was going to apply for the job because I had the experience and it had been a similar style of role that I'd been doing up in New South Wales. So Ron called me into his office. And he said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm good. How are you?" And he goes, "Yeah, good. Why didn't you apply for the job down in business systems?" And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, well, look, we've got a lot going on. I'm really excited about these things that we're doing at the moment. I want to finish this for you." And he goes, "I'm going to stop you there." And I might misquote him here, so just bear that in mind. But this is what I got out of it. Do not apply for that job out of some misguided sense of loyalty to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, wow.
And I went, all right. So I went and applied for the job and I got it.
Yeah.
So it really was, what I took out of that, and I wasn't offended by it. I didn't feel like he was having a go at me. It was he knew me well enough to know how to give me feedback.
Yep.
And Blunt is pretty good with me. And he just wanted to be clear. Look, I know you're loyal and I appreciate it and I get all that stuff. You've got a career that you need to think about, and this job needs you and you need this job.
It's just an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think what I'm hearing there is well that he recognised that probably one of your personal values was loyalty, and he needed to give you almost that permission to break your personal values, or not break, but to flex them in order to go forward, which I think is incredible leadership.
Yeah, very. I was very fortunate at that organisation to have 2 or 3 mentors that have set me up for my rest of my career. And if I was to give people any piece of advice, mentors are found, not given.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want a mentor, you'll find them. You've just got to let them in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. They're not going to land in your lap. You've got to kind of look out there for people that resonate or are going to add value or contribute something along that journey.
Yeah.
In that role, so the role then was with Suncorp, which was actually is it the parent company to Amy?
It is now, yeah. So that Suncorp bought Amy at a point, and which fundamentally changed an enormous amount. Not for the worse. It just changed it because it's a new organisation at that point in time. So that made it a very interesting decision point for me. And I think first time I sat down and I learned, I felt like everybody was doing the wrong thing. Right? Suncorp were doing the wrong thing. Everything was wrong. Like, don't do that. This is against our values. This isn't how we, all these kind of things. And one day I was running home from work. And
running away? Or
No. I thought about it a couple of times. But I was running home from work and there was a lot of negative talk going on, right, like in my head on the run home. It's a funny thing about running. If you're not listening to anything at that point in time, you end up having a conversation with yourself in the head, or at least I do. And at that point in time, probably saner thought processes prevailed, and I stopped. And I was living in Elwood at the time, and I think I stopped at about St Kilda, and I was looking out at over Port Phillip Bay, and I went, it's not them, it's me.
Yeah, right.
Right? They've done nothing wrong. The organisation is an organisation. It looks after, over 10,000 people, and they are setting up the way they feel they need to be able to support their customers and their staff to get the right outcomes. And if that means that I've diverged with the organisation, it's me. So maybe that's time means it's time for me to start looking elsewhere and find a place where I can, join up with it again.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So that was the point when you left Suncorp. Sorry.
I left Suncorp then. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to go back a step. Sorry, just prior to that, because I noticed, or my take from your resume was in that role. Essentially, you had a deep understanding of the kind of business, what they did as a business, and the way that they monetized that. And then they kind of put you as this interface with technology and the partner IBM. There's a lot of complex stakeholders going on in that relationship. So I was just quite interested in kind of how did you develop that skill set, and what do you think is important within stakeholder management?
First thing is know your business.
Yeah.
Right. I think knowing how your business works, why it works that way, what the levers are in the business, the culture, the things they're willing to accept, the things they're not, they're key, because it's really hard to make decisions or negotiate with a third party or between different areas of the business if you don't actually understand what's going on. So I think that's been key for me and was key for that role. Be honest. Like, there's a lot of times where people will be they'll avoid having the difficult conversations, either internally for fear of maybe the impact that it's going to have on your personal brand or something like that, or externally because you never know what's going to happen in your career, and what if I need this person later on. The fact is, most people just want to know what's going on, whether you're a technologist in a third-party organisation that's coming in to help, whether you're an operational person or part of the team internally, or whether you're the salesperson from a software vendor who walks in the door and is trying to sell you something. Yeah. Be honest. I can either work with you on these things or I can't, or these are the things I can work with you on, and there's no point in talking about these because I can't do anything about them, or I don't want to, and this is why. Yes. But be honest. Yeah. Be honest with people. Like, they'll appreciate it in the long run, even if it sucks at the time.
Well, that's the we were talking before, the radical candor, being clear with people, clarity, honesty. Okay. Sorry, so I kind of cut you off there and went back. So 5 years in that role, another solid innings, and then off to Macmillan Shakespeare Group.
Yes.
So what or who drew you to that role?
Michael Kay was the CEO of Macmillan Shakespeare Group. So he left as the CEO of Amy and he went to Macmillan Shakespeare Group. Yeah. And I happened to have his personal email address from previous interactions. And when I decided it was time to leave Suncorp, I sent him an email and said, hey, I don't know if you're looking for anyone like me, but I'd really love the opportunity to come and work for you. And again, I knew nothing about Macmillan Shakespeare. I just knew I liked working with Michael Kay at the time, and at the same time, I started tidying up a resume that was I hadn't done for 11 years, and starting to talk to some people that I'd known, but I'd really not spent a lot of time outside of I'll call it the cocoon of Amy and Suncorp, and that's one thing that we can get caught in. We get caught in a cocoon of the work that we're in.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
And we forget having those relationships outside, which, as based on my experience, you're going to move jobs. Yeah. It's hard when you decide, oh my God, I actually need to try something different. It's time for me to move. When you pop your head up and you look around and you're starting from scratch, that's really, really difficult. Yeah. So I tried to do that. And anyway, Michael got back to me. He rang me, said, come in, get an interview. So I got interviewed. It was early in the year. It was somewhere around April or something like that. So I got interviewed by 3 of the senior execs there. And I went home after that, talked to Michael briefly afterwards, and I went home after that, and he called me a couple of days later and he said, you've got the job. I know you've only got to give 2 weeks notice at Amy or at Suncorp. We really need you in the role. So I want you to resign and start in 2 weeks. And I said, I was thinking of taking a break. And he goes, I'll give you 2 weeks off over Christmas. I went, all right.
You said you like direct feedback. I feel that there's consistency here of people being pretty blunt with their expectations with you.
Yeah, they've always been pretty good with those things.
Yeah.
And I think that's come down to, as I've got more senior, particularly being honest with people about that as well, like saying to people, because it's funny, like you don't realise as you get more senior, you don't realise that people look at you differently until you stop and think about what it was like when you were in the contact centre and how you viewed some of those people. So actually being able to say to people, I don't always get it right, so can you just tell me?
Yeah.
I won't get offended, I promise.
Yeah.
And then you've got to demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the key. But yeah, I ended up at Macmillan, which was great.
And I saw in that role, I saw all sorts of stuff around governance, risk, business continuity, disaster recovery systems, sort of building upon what you'd done. But again, it probably taking you into new areas you'd not been involved in before.
Yeah.
So how did you discover that? How did you learn about those kind of aspects of the business?
Oh, it was a really interesting journey in there because Macmillan was quite small when we started and grew rapidly, really rapidly, like unbelievably. And I was a department of one when I started. Right. So I went from managing 70-something people at Suncorp to being a department of one sitting out the outside the photocopying room. But again, I think it came down to Michael just gave me jobs. He just came out and he went, oh, here's an IT strategy. Here's some proposals for IT strategies. Can you have a look through it and tell me who you think we should take and why? I've got a meeting this afternoon. We've got a meeting this afternoon. Okay, no worries. I'll get into it and I'll come and have a chat to you then about that. And as a result, I kind of brought the skills that I had learned at Amy into that role. So I ended up with a lot of the business analysis, the program management, things like that falling under me, as well as working with any third-party vendor that tended to come along. We needed to replace a telephony system. Michael pulled me into his office and said to me, I want you to look after telephony. Yeah. Here's another learning for everybody, by the way. When you look at stuff and it's a mess and you can see it going really badly and you go, that's not my problem. It'll become your problem if you give people the opportunity to give it your problem. So get involved, make a difference, be the change. So I ended up in his office and he said, oh, can you look after telephony? And my answer was, I don't really know anything about it, but I'll have a crack. I just might need some help. And he said, fine, go and do that. Come back and tell me what you need. So it was things like that, and it accumulated over a period of time. So with telephony, dealing with third-party vendors again, learning a whole new industry of vendors and how they work, and working my way through how telephony works and how it actually works behind the scenes in the contact centre, and how it can impact if we get it wrong and all those kind of things. And that leads into BCP and DR and how we're going to manage that, and then writing the policies and working with people, like just getting your hands dirty on all of those things, right? Like just get involved, because the main thing is if you manage it and you don't get into the detail, you're not going to learn much from it. You're going to miss the opportunity to learn. And later on, you'll get less opportunity to learn. Later on in your career, you'll get less opportunity to learn because people want you to do a whole bunch of other things. And you go, oh, I actually can't get into the detail anymore.
Yes.
So if you're in a brand new thing that you have not spent enough time knowing enough to be dangerous, I call it.
Yep.
Then you can come unstuck pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So look, I'm going to come back to this again because I'm interested in the way that what people saw in you through those opportunities. But just sticking with Macmillan Shakespeare, so after about 4.5 years there, you obviously were very successful because you then stepped up to CIO.
Yep.
Was that as part of a succession plan?
No. So we'd never had a CIO.
Oh, well, there you go.
I accumulated a role, is what I would say. I got the business analysis, program management, did a whole bunch of other things, and then they wanted me to do telephony, so I took over telephony, and then they gave me applications because I knew enough about technology, and I'd worked enough in programs and IT projects and all those kind of things that they said, oh, well, have a crack at this and see how you go. And it was incremental. I'm going to give you an opportunity. You have a crack at it. It was pretty much under the premise that we just want to see how you go. Like, we could give someone else the job. We could go and hire someone externally. We could do all those kind of things, but we'd love to give you a crack. And so I was doing that, and Michael Kay, who was a fantastic mentor, was so busy. There was so many things going on, and he didn't have the time. And I was a good technician, but not a great exec, is what I would say.
Okay.
Michael was trying to help coach me, but he didn't have enough time to do it. So he took me aside one day and sat me down and said, look, don't take this the wrong way. I don't have enough time for you at this point in time. Would you be okay if you reported to a guy named Simon Fortune, who very experienced executive, had been around the traps for a long period of time. And I looked at Michael and went, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, right.
I in that instance, I understood what Michael was saying, and he was completely upfront and honest about it. And if you take your ego out of it, it was the best thing for the organisation. It was the best opportunity I had to do the best job that I could. And I learned an enormous amount. He used to be a CFO.
Yep.
So he sent me on a Finance for Dummies course, as I call it. It was Finance for Non-Financial Managers is what it was called. I learned an enormous amount doing that. And I learned all I will call the fundamentals of being in a role like a CIO role.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was very good for my career as well. And I think people get fixated on who they're reporting to as opposed to the role that they're doing and whether they are set up for success in that role. And often the part where you're not set up for success is whether you've got the right support, guidance, training behind you. It's not whether someone's asked you what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. You speak with such conviction and humility as well. I think you've taken so much feedback through your career and kind of been through probably a very different type of journey to get to it. And you've taken some pretty, it sounds like, bruising feedback along the way as well, and rolled with it and been better for it, which is great. What do you think set you up for personality wise to be able to kind of work that way?
My mum's Dutch.
Right.
Grew up in a largely Dutch family. They're not really good at subtlety.
Yep.
So they'll tell you exactly what's going on. So it might be cultural, partly cultural. I also think, I spent my life playing sport.
Okay.
I started playing sport when I was 6-7 years old.
Yeah.
So it was a long time ago. And part of that journey, particularly as you get into seniors and particularly around when you're talking about the 90s and the like, that they give you brutal feedback.
Yeah.
There's no subtlety or hugs or any of that kind of stuff associated to the feedback that you get there. And I was a goalkeeper, and I spent most of my life doing that. And when you stuff up as a goalkeeper, there are dire consequences for the team, and there are a minimum of 6 people on that field that will tell you all about it.
Yeah.
Not the least of which, the opposition are going to get on it as well.
Yeah.
So you've got to be resilient. You've got to be willing to take the feedback, and you've got to be able to work through a lot of the noise to find out what the nugget is in the feedback as well. Because people will say a lot of stuff to get one point across. Yeah. And if you're willing to understand that the intent is right, or at least take the view that the intent is right when you go into the conversation, you can sift through and try and find the one nugget that's actually the feedback that might help you. And if you can take that, you'll do well. There's a difference between taking the feedback and taking abuse, right?
Yes.
And most people, particularly in your career, and your loved ones, they actually want to help. And if you can keep that front of mind when you're going through some of those bruising encounters, as hard as that might be, you'll find the nugget.
Something in there. You left Macmillan Shakespeare after 13 years, I think. So 11 years over here with Suncorp and Amy, and then 12 and a half here with Macmillan Shakespeare. How did you sort of feel making that move after that time? So it's a long time in one place.
It's a very long time in one place, and you know the growth story in Macmillan was very similar to the growth story in Amy, and I had the opportunity to do probably 5 jobs in 12 years, and you know 5 jobs in 11 years when I was at Amy. So that kept it going. I think Macmillan got to a stage in its development where the industrialisation we'd gone through that industrialisation and growth phase, and I'd got to a point where I looked around and I went, I'm not sure how much more I can do for this organisation. I'm in a role that I'm not going to move. They're not going to move me sideways. I'm not overly excited about putting my hand up for CEO roles, even if they were to consider me. So it's time for me to have a look at something else. Macmillan's a great organisation, and they were fantastic for me for a really long time. But at that point in time, I went, well, it's time for me to give somebody else a crack at this, because I'm not bringing anything new to the table anymore, and I want to learn and I want to grow and I want to try something a little bit different for me as well. Thought I'd chuck my hat in the ring and see if anybody else was interested in having me.
Well, you achieved different because you then went to residential house building with Carlisle Homes. So you ticked that goal. What drew you to that?
It is a fantastic company with fantastic people. Culturally, great place, and I really enjoyed the conversations that I had during the recruitment process with the executives that are there, and I think I got interviewed maybe 5 times.
Right.
So they were really rigorous about it, and I got interviewed by the owner and MD, a guy named John, twice, and he's a very, very passionate, and wonderful person who cares about his customers and his staff, and that came across at the interviews. And I went, people hire people, right? I go through the process and I decide whether I want to work with people. And that's something I always bring into the conversations that I have. And I really wanted to have a crack at working with these people and see what it was like. And the building industry seemed interesting to me as well. I'd never been in it before. It seemed really like a really interesting opportunity. So, went in there and had a fantastic couple of years working with them. They really enjoyed it.
And then you kind of got pulled back into your lane, so to speak.
I did.
With Fleet Partners. So what enticed you back into that role?
I think I wasn't looking for a job. I certainly wasn't planning on leaving Carlisle. The old CEO, the last CEO, and the current CEO reached out to me and asked me if I'd like to have a coffee. So I caught up with them to have a chat, and they pretty much flat out asked me if I wanted to come and work for them. And I looked at them and went, not at the moment. If you'd asked me a year ago, maybe, but I'm in the middle of setting some stuff up for Carlisle, and I think it's really important that I finish this job, and I wouldn't have felt right leaving them at the time. But we stayed in touch, and they caught up with me a couple of times thereafter, and came to me after I'd been at Carlisle for a little bit longer and asked me again, and they laid out the challenges in front of it, and to be honest, it just looked really hard. Looked like a really difficult puzzle to solve. I wasn't even sure what the picture looked like at the time, so it might have been one of those whiz jigs in my head. And I like a challenge. I love that kind of stuff, and I like not knowing, and I like the opportunity to try and pick things apart and help people put them back together. So given the history in my career of doing things that I don't really know the answer to, I thought that would be really exciting and an opportunity too good to pass up on. So I will honestly say I reluctantly, for the first time in my career, reluctantly went in and resigned from a role that I really enjoyed with people that I loved working with.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to talk more broadly about your career now.
Sure.
And I'm actually going to kind of start there because I'm interested. What I'm hearing as a trend through your career is people gravitate towards you when they've got big problems. And it seems like you relish taking those problems.
Yeah.
But what do you think people sort of see in you that make them, kind of want to come to you with those problems?
Oh, I don't know. No one's ever asked me that question before. I guess I'll tell them I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'll have a crack, but I'll tell them straight up. I'm not sure how this is going to work. These are some of the things that I can tell you and that I'm aware of. These are some of the things that I might do to try and figure it out. I can't necessarily solve your problem straight up, but I'll have a red hot crack at it. And I know some people that can help. I'd love to bring other people along in the journey within your organisation, and if we need somebody from somewhere else, I know some good people that might be able to put their hand up.
Yeah, great. Okay. And if you could turn back the clock, are there any career decisions that you would change?
No, I can't think of any.
No.
I might not have gone to, a hotel in Springvale to work for a year, but other than that,
nothing in your tech career.
No, nothing in my tech career. I think, it's been a fantastic accidental career over a period of time where I've learned an enormous amount from some wonderful people, and I'd be worried that if I tweaked one thing, then it might have a cascading effect on all the rest. So, and I really have enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to learn as much as I have, and continue to learn as much as I do. I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, right. My observation, for what it's worth, is I feel that you've always been consciously in control of your career and in the decisions you've made from what you've sort of outlined. So I guess it's harder to have regrets when you've you've been at the wheel. We've also spoken a lot about feedback, and you've given multiple instances where you've received feedback that shaped you and kind of developed you. A question I always love to ask people is, what's the most significant feedback? If you were to think about one piece of significant feedback that really shaped you, what would it be?
There was a guy named Noel Evans that I worked for a long period of time early when I was at Amy. He's the one that gave me my first BA job and the like, and he was fantastic. He was amazing at giving feedback that was incredibly subtle. Probably the most, and someone that you really wanted to like you and appreciate you and admire the work that you did. And probably the best piece of feedback I ever got is he told me to shut up in a meeting without telling me to shut up. He just put his hand over and pointed a finger at me when I was in the middle of a diatribe about something. And so I stopped dead at that point in time and didn't speak for the rest of the meeting. And I went and talked to him afterwards, and he said, "You don't need to tell people that you're smart."
Interesting.
Yeah,
there you go. That's interesting. It's actually very similar feedback to Gavin Wood.
Right.
I think his feedback was, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
Or you don't always need to win. So
yes.
I think was his feedback, actually, I think specifically. It's something I've read on your LinkedIn bio.
Right.
And you're probably now thinking, what did I write? You said, I'm a collaborator, comfortable negotiating, influencing, and leading large teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the word that really stood out there for me, collaborator, is one of those, but the role of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that kind of fit in the world of being successful in tech?
Control is easy, right? You can control what's going on in your team. Yeah. By and large, you don't want to dictate, but you can control what can happen within your team. The hard part is actually influencing the people outside of your team to be able to get on the journey or to adjust their journey to be able to meet what you need to do. And there's like influencing how people think about technology is really important in the role that we do.
Yeah.
So technology's a consumer thing now, and trends smash us in the face on a daily basis, right? 99% of the time, we just need to get the fundamentals right, and people will get romanced by things that they see out in the market, and there's plenty out at the moment, and I'm not going to talk about any of those, but there's plenty out in the market at the moment and have been for a long period of time, and they'll come and talk to you about it. So being able to have a conversation with them about their business, what they're trying to achieve, how you can help them do it, and move them away from the new shiny thing and towards the thing that you believe will add the most value is really important. And the flip side is part of influencing people is being willing to be influenced as well.
Yeah.
So, you can convince me otherwise. That's okay. We can have a conversation and open dialogue about it, but it has to be two-way. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? But know the business, know their motivations, or at least try and understand their motivations, and be able to have a good, nice, open, honest conversation about why you believe this is the way that we should go, and then be open to being influenced.
Yeah, great. And again, it's interesting because I think what I feel we're seeing is increasingly tech is becoming more mainstream. It's in the news, cyber attacks and AI and ChatGPT. It's becoming more commonplace. And of course, as you say, a small amount of knowledge is probably even more dangerous than being dangerous to have knowledge. I think, as you said earlier, but it is a small amount of knowledge, and these products and products are getting, I think, pushed probably faster and quicker and harder than I've ever seen at any other time before in technology.
And the consumerization of them makes it challenging.
Yeah.
And we love them, right? We work in tech because we love tech, right?
Yes.
So we love playing around with them and learning new technologies and all those kind of things. So we've just got to be conscious of what's the commercial outcome that you're trying to drive.
Yep.
Stop, don't pick up solutions looking for problems. Understand your problems and then apply the solutions, like what solutions are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm going to kind of step back to your career for a second. When you're thinking about your career and you're kind of planning it and you're thinking about maybe whether it's the right time to make a move or what's going on, who have you looked for through your career to get that sort of advice or counsel?
Oh, there's a few people. Very seldom have I gone to my senior, like the mentors that I've talked about up until now. There's one guy that has been a constant through the majority of my career, and he's still a friend of mine. I'm actually having lunch with him on Friday, a guy named Mike Giuliano. And Mike is amazingly smart, incredibly smart. And he had been the equivalent of CIO, and he had been an HR exec, and he'd been a whole bunch of other things in his career. And he's a voice of reason to me.
Yeah.
So I sit down with him and we still catch up. He's been retired for maybe 10 years or so now, but we still catch up and I tell him what's going on, and he asks me a whole lot of questions.
Yeah.
And that's been really helpful with me making some of those decisions.
Yeah, great.
My sister's been, I'm very close to my sister, and my sister knows me probably better than anyone, and she's quite happy to tell me exactly what she thinks, which I love, and I find incredibly valuable. So it's people like that. I've got a couple of friends who are have probably been on a similar career journey to me as well, that don't mind giving me a bit of feedback on, and it's generally comes down to how I am feeling over a longer period of time.
Yes. Yeah, great. Again, it's interesting because what I'm hearing there is the kind of segmentation of different people in your life. And they provide a different support or a different aspect to what you're doing, and
different perspectives.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Depending on what you need at that time, towards what you're doing. What do you enjoy the most about being a CIO?
People.
Yeah,
I love working with people. I think having a day where I get to spend a lot of it talking to people about challenges and how we can work our way through it, and opportunities or options we've got to be able to work on those. That's really exciting to me. I mean, I love the elegance of something that's beautifully technical, but I love the chaos of trying to make it commercial at the same time. That's really, I find that stuff really interesting and exciting because, technically elegant doesn't convert to commercially viable often. Yeah. So being able to bridge that gap, but the people's the main thing. Like being able to lead and support and guide people is the best thing. I often say to people, when you retire and you're sitting on the porch out the back and you got a glass of wine in your hand or beer or whatever you choose you're going to drink, and you're watching the sun set and you're thinking about your career, I'm not going to think about the projects that I put in. At no stage will I sit there and go, whew, glad I put miles in when I was at Interleasing. Yeah, that was a great project. I'm going to think about the people.
Yep.
I'm going to think about their careers that have come off the back of it and the opportunities that they've grasped as a result of the time we spent together or contributed to by the time we spent together. That's the best thing about being a CIO, whether you're any role, where you're in a leadership role, it's got to be the people. And if it's not the people, then I'll be lost on it.
Yeah, great. And that passion for people obviously comes through in everything you've kind of already spoken about, I think, today. If you were going to pass on a singular piece of sage advice to the next generation, to help them make some better career choices or decisions along the way, what would it be?
Don't miss the opportunity to have a crack at something. Yeah. Even if it doesn't work out for you. Yeah. Don't miss the opportunity to have a crack at something. Like I could say be curious, but someone else has used that, right? So, but have a crack. Yeah. Like get your hands dirty. Yeah. Get into the detail. Learn. The more you learn, the more you can give people.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Final question. We're in the State Library. You did a degree in English literature.
I did.
It's going to be completely amiss if I don't ask the next question, which is what's your recommended read?
Business book or otherwise?
Go both. That's why not.
Okay. Yeah. The business book I'll start with, either Built to Last or Good to Great by Collins and Porras. Yeah. Fantastic books if you want to learn about culture and how you can grow businesses based around that. They're fantastic books. Forget that some of those organisations, particularly in Built to Last, have moved on from there. A lot's happened since then, but the premises put forward still apply. From another perspective, Cannery Row, by John Steinbeck.
Yep. Okay.
John Steinbeck's probably my favourite of the American writers, and I like the way that he writes. I think Cannery Row is a fantastic story about humans and the human condition, particularly given the hardships that were going on during the Depression and the like.
Yeah, I'm sure Steinbeck's of Mice and Men.
Yeah, he did Mice and Men.
Probably more famous for that, but I don't know that one. That's
So there's a couple. Sweet Tuesday and Cannery Row are both based in Monterey, down Cannery Road in Monterey when they did a lot of canning out of fish and the like. So there was all the fishing there.
And Jim Collins is a great shout as well. I think I haven't read Built to Last. I've read Good to Great, and I think the depth of detail and research, that's a true research. It's not a flippant idea that you've kind of plucked and then tagged on some stories that work with it. It's proper, detailed, thorough research.
Yeah. And read Built to Last. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Look, thanks for your time. This has been really, really insightful, really interesting. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be kind of interested in what you've had to say today. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to Tales from Tech Titans. And be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to get more insights about tech careers, then check out the Emmbr, that's EMMBR LinkedIn page for the latest updates, articles, and engaging discussions.